AJ, bring us back to your playing days. What's today like for a player? Say your name's been bandied about, you're on the trade block, everybody knows it. Are you trying to find out every morsel of info from your agent, what people are hearing? Do you try to ignore it until the deadline's over? How do you handle a day like this?
Well, luckily for me, I was never traded during the season, so I don't really know
Hmm.
what I was never really rumored to be traded during the season. But I know guys that were traded, and man, it sucks for those guys because they're sitting there sweating. They're like, "Am I going to get traded? Am I going somewhere? Am I staying?" And think about it, these guys have families, these guys have lives, these guys have things other than just baseball. And gosh, it sucks. But I know I felt it for guys. I know when guys get traded, you give them a big hug, and you're like, "Man, I wish you the best." Because normally when guys get traded, one or two things has happened: either they're going to a better team with a chance to win, or you're getting somebody back that can help you win. So it's kind of bittersweet. If it's a younger guy that gets traded for a veteran guy, you're like, well, wish you well, but man, we got a really good player for you. So I'm okay with it. But then when the veteran guy gets traded and you get young prospects back you don't even know, that's when it's hard because you're like, man, you're my buddy, but hey, I'm happy for you. I'm stuck here. But guess what? You get to go to a place where you have an opportunity to win, and I'm happy for them.
I've got to ask you about the White Sox. What
Oh,
went wrong this year? And he's been labeled an untouchable, but if this mix isn't going to work, it feels like they've got to start over again. Should they consider listening on Dylan Cease today?
okay. So I'm going to start with your first part of that. What went
Hmm.
wrong? It'd be easier for me to say what went right. Luis Robert Jr. Um, yeah, that's about it that went right this year for him. Other than that, it's been a complete disaster on the South Side. And I'm a White Sox fan. I root for the White Sox. Should they consider Dylan Cease? I think they should because I think they could transform their minor league system. He has 2.5. I said yesterday he had 1.5 years. I was informed later he has 2.5 more years of control. So you can get a lot for a guy of his caliber with 2.5 years of control. And I mean, I think they should do it because honestly, unless they go out and spend a ton of money this winter, which Jerry Reinsdorf, we all know, and the White Sox, they don't do that traditionally. They're not going to be good next year, and they're probably not going to be good in 25. And then Dylan Cease is a free agent after the 25 season. So, what what's your thing that you're building on? Who's your core, right? Tim Anderson has one more year. He's had an awful year, right? Luis Roberts signed. Moncada hasn't been healthy. Eloy hasn't been healthy. So who's your core? Now, if you can go out and trade Dylan Cease and get 4 to 6 players, I'm not saying you can get the Soto trade, the haul that he got, but if you can get 4 to 6 players that can help your organization for the next 5 years, I don't know how you say no to that because again, I just don't see a path to them competing the next 2 years while Dylan Cease is there.
Can the Cubs win a World Series with this roster? Maybe not, but there are a lot of teams that are chasing down the Braves in the National League, and I don't think that should mean that automatically you become a seller. I do
Hmm.
think that the Cubs are that one ball club that could be a formidable dark horse to win the National League Central. And once you get into the postseason, most anything can happen. And it's just about getting there more than anything else. And so, in terms of getting Candelario, I think it's a good move for the Cubs. I would push back on the idea that they shouldn't have done it, and it's all about giving up Cody Bellinger and worrying about next year. I think Jeimer Candelario, 3.1 F4, 121 WRC plus. I think that was a great move for them. Meanwhile, the Brewers, they get Mark Canha, 107 WRC plus and a .6 F4 when they are in desperate need of an offense in general. I look at this and say the Reds really haven't done very much. They're still a good team. Yeah, they should get healthier, but if you go by third order wins, the Cubs are number one in that division. They still have a ways to go to physically be number one in that division. But I look at this and say the Cubs are arguably playing the best baseball. They've had the toughest schedule up to this point. Yeah, the Brewers have
Hmm.
an easier schedule the rest of the way, but the Cubs feel like a more complete ball club to me, to where I would not be surprised if they go out and capture this division, Joe. One little bit of analysis as to why I am fading this Falcons offense. Even though I think the run game will be stout, the passing game, which you absolutely have to have in today's NFL, I've got a real big question, and it involves the tight end Kyle Pitts. He is recovering from a multi-ligament knee injury, and he may need some time before becoming a real threat for the Falcons. And while we focus so much on this rushing attack, I can't help but think in a perfect world that Pitts is an integral part of this passing attack. And if they just don't throw to him or he's not 100%, that is a massive hit. So why in the world are we backing the Falcons as some dark horse contender, Aaron, when you've got your ultimate playmaker as a tight end, a pass-catching tight end, who's not 100% and will not be 100% when the season starts, and then you've got some real big quarterback concerns?
Well, they added Mac Hollins. He's another big receiver. Of course, they've got Drake London. The outlier here for me is Heineke. I mean, Heineke could be coming in. You see what you have with Desmond Ridder. Maybe the guy does stink, but I think Heineke could at least keep this team afloat. I mean, they almost beat the Bucs in the playoffs a few years ago. So against Tom Brady. So I think Heineke is a solid backup. I'm sure we'll see plenty of him, and I'm not as down on this Falcons team. You got Bijan Robinson, obviously. I know you were talking about the importance of the passing game, but put in Heineke if Ridder stinks, like combining the two names. If he stinks, and I really think they have a chance, Joe.
Yeah, Ridder didn't show much at the end of the season. 4 games, 2 total touchdowns in those 4 games. I think we had this exact conversation off air yesterday. There is a lot of Falcons steam, and it just seems to me like the reason that there are people backing is because it's a terrible division. You've got to pick somebody, and my guess is that people don't want to pick the favorite.
Eagles, Dolphins, then at the Jets, at the Cowboys, host the Saints.
Yikes.
I did a deep dive on them yesterday for our defensive. I was looking at Christian Gonzalez, but then I was like, oh, man, this guy against these offenses, like, woo, stay away. It's going to be tough.
That's brutal.
You know,
yeah.
At some point, though, you still have to believe this is the NFL, and you're going to get a lot of coin flip games. And
I agree, and it's Bill Belichick. And I thought about it. You know, if Christian Gonzalez, couldn't step up against these offenses and keep this team around 500, then maybe there's a case for the guy. But still, you look at that schedule, it is. I don't even know. The schedule makers did them no favors. It's a really tough schedule for the Patriots.
It is, but there's also a month stretch where they have Washington, Indianapolis bye at the Giants, and I don't think the Giants are going to be as tough as they were.
I agree.
A year ago. So there's a path where, oh man, they get the Chiefs too. You're right.
They're getting punched in the mouth early. And then, like you said, they got hopefully a layup at the Raiders, and then a few more easier games before the bye. But then it's just like back to being brutal again.